this as a vehicle to make new friends. The next slide, please. Jane. Okay. So what are some of the ongoing challenges people have told us? Well, first, I think the message we heard loud and clear is that applying an equity lens to every single issue we look at. So looking at equity is not a separate, distinct topic where you do it only in and of itself. You can certainly do that. But we've come to believe that if you really are going to address this issue in a full and effective manner, you're going to have to weave that lens through every single question you ask. As Brenda was talking today in our morning session, with the emerging scholars, there's a lot of self-reflection that has to happen with every one of us, and ask, where are my biases? Where are my assumptions? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And unless we do that as we approach issues, I don't know we really will advance the field. This is a painfully white field. I'm looking at the little boxes on my screen, and there's more. That's kind of what it is. And we're going to work very hard to change that. Bring in the more diverse voices across the board, not just researchers of color, but also the communities and the families with which we work. So we are going to work on that. But as we get to that point, there has to be a lot of self-reflection for all of us. Now, many of the long-standing issues when we did these focus groups, remember I talked about enduring and emerging issues? Most of the issues people raised were frankly enduring issues. They were issues that had troubled people, bothered them about how they did programs, wondered why we weren't making progress. And so I want to list some of these here because they're things that'll be familiar to you. People talk to us about being able to do more reflective supervision. And that's really a catch-all for just how do we supervise workers? How do we get workers to the point where they feel validated and supported so that they'll do well in their job, but they'll also do well by themselves. Questions of onboard staff training and professional development. People still wonder, how do you build a career ladder in the home visiting field? How do you make people feel that this is a field they can stay in for a while and do some advancement? People still struggle with participant engagement and retention strategies. It is an age-old problem. I did my first engagement study in home visiting in, I don't know, the early 2000s or something. The moment we started accepting families, we realized that more families were walking out the back door where we were trying to bring them in the front door. So that's still an issue, and it's constant. People struggle about how to tailor program content to specific families. This is a little bit different than the precision paradigm in that this is the in the moment kind of decisions home visitors make when a family comes to them. And they need to decide, am I going to push this issue or that issue? Am I going to change the curriculum in this way or that way? People are still struggling with how to do that and where to get their information. Lots of struggles around collaboration and coordination. If you're in a rich service area like Massachusetts, you have a lot to choose from. On the other hand, if you're in rural Mississippi, there's going to be a lot fewer choices. So people are still trying to figure out, who are my best bet in partners? Who do I need to bring to the table? Because I know as a home visitor, I can't do it all. There's just no way it's going to happen. I need some help. People were very concerned about ensuring access to effective clinical and remedial services. I'll mention in a minute how that reflected out in the few respondents we got from the HARC survey. But it really is something where people are saying the families they're getting now are different in kind than the families we might have been getting 10, 15 years ago. The families we're getting now are a little more stressed, a little more overwhelmed, a little less certain that they feel confident in their ability to make good decisions for their children, are aware of a lot more inequities in their environment, a lot more challenging some of the things they might have been told to do in the past, and just in a sense, recognizing for the first time that they do need help in a profound, I'm just not going to get along. I really want home visiting programs to begin to address some of my deep-seated problems. And that often requires some referral to clinical and remedial services. And then finally, a number of people said, how do these funding program requirements impact what we do? Some people specifically raised McPhee requirements, but others, it was just a funder wants me to do X, and I find that it really doesn't marry very well with the program I need to deliver. So they were concerned about that. But all of these issues, while they're important, and I don't mean to minimize them in any way, shape, or form, and going forward, there's going to have to be a lot of work done in these domains. These are issues that we did put in this enduring basket. The thing that, yes, they've always been bad. Some of them are getting worse. Some of them are maybe stabilizing. None of them are solved, but they weren't exactly what we meant by emerging issues. So if you go to the next slide, when we looked at all the issues that people were raising to us, though, we did come up with a salient number of what we really felt were all the issues that I raised before, that it was an unforeseen situation. They had transcended any approaches we had normally thought we could do. And in some cases, they truly were new and operating on a different level. So what were some of those things? Hiring, retaining staff was the number one issue people talked about. Whether we talked to home visiting models, whether we talked to researchers, whether we talked to state leads, whether we talked to community advocates, everybody talked about the workforce challenge. And here's the deal with the workforce challenge. It is a challenge that exists in the field of home visiting, but that field is situated in a broader labor market where things are really different now. People want different things from work. Workers want more flexibility as a rule. People want a better work-life balance. And we're in a field, home visiting, where it's really hard to give people that flexible, balanced work because of the nature of what we do. And if it was just home visiting experiencing this, I'd say, okay, maybe it's just our field, but it's every helping profession. Whether you're talking about people that work in mental health, people that work in medicine, people that work in nursing, people that work in the religious community, they're all saying, I'm at my max. I can't give anymore because I just don't have anything left in the tank. So workers are asking for these kinds of things, and it presents challenges for home visitors a lot. And we see it in the early childhood field. Sometimes people think it's just money, but I would argue it's probably it's a little bit more than money. That for many people, you can't pay them enough to do the work because they have other needs and other criteria. So we're not going to solve it with more money. Not that I'm not advocating for more money, always good. Paying more, excellent idea. But as we look to hire and retain staff, we're probably going to have to be looking for solutions other than let's just give them a few more dollars an hour. Second issue we heard a lot about pretty consistently was this hybrid model. And I know some of you, I'm looking at some of the faces on the screen. I know you've done some work on the hybrid models. People know that they're here to stay, but what they don't know is what they're going to look like. They're still working out this balance between what does it mean to deliver services in person versus virtual? What are the relative pros and cons? And how are we going to determine that? Who's going to decide when we're virtual and when we're at home? Is it the parent that's going to decide? Is it the provider that's going to decide? Are you going to do it always the same way? Are you going to just leave it up to the conditions that you're faced? Some of the programs are concerned, the models particularly are concerned about, well, what if we agree to do it X? What is that? Do we have to redo all of our research? How do we know that we're going to retain the same effects if we haven't really looked at our program the way that it's been structured? Do we want to do we need to move too soon? Because this is a learning curve. People haven't figured it out. So some of the challenges we heard from respondents had a lot to do with, I don't want to put my oar in the water right now because I'm not exactly sure where it should go. That there's still some need to sort of figure out and ferret out how you want to do that balance. The third issue we heard a lot about are the policy and community context provides both new opportunities as well as challenges to deliver the services. And the variability in policy, the federal policy changes over time. State policies are very different in the current moment. You've got states that have expanded Medicaid and states that have not. You've got states that are more generous with their benefits in terms of income supports, food stamps, housing, and all the like, states that are not. You've got states that are more flexible in what kinds of family planning they will do, and states that are becoming increasingly less flexible. All of those issues have direct impacts on what home visitors can offer, what they can expect from their community. And in some cases, people will say what they are fearful to do for legal ramifications. So this idea of context, programs have never been able to ignore the context they were in. but now it's even more difficult to ignore the context they're in. So if you're a national model, what guidance do you give your affiliates that are located across all 40 or 50 states that are going to be facing very different challenges? The fourth issue we heard a lot about was really about the nature of research itself. How do you do high impact research? And I will say that both this issue and the second issue, HARC's been playing around. We did a session at the summit on the research that I did with Allison West and Jill Pilene about what do we mean by rigorous research in this environment. As you say, if you do 3 randomized trials and you find effects, you're an evidence-based program. If you talk to 3 families that say the program was great and we really loved it, you know that 3 families loved your program. So how do you take the voices we know are really, really important for making a difference and hold that data with this in light of the data that you might be finding from a randomized trial? Thinking about what programs are used to doing for families versus what families themselves tell us they want. And how we marry those 2 ideas. What does it mean to do rigorous research? How does it fit within standards that some academic departments may say, this is what rigorous research looks like, and you may be seeing a need to do something very different. So how the research community itself addresses its work is an emerging issue we think that's something we need to address. And then finally, I think there is this balance of investment between continuing to target services to families we have notions of that present risk, and often that risk is set by the very standards which only breed further discrimination and stigmatization of families by saying certain characteristics. You're not married, young maternal age, you're a person of color. Might say, oh, those are the people that are struggling. Those are the people that need services, versus offering a more universal platform that says, you know, parenting is tough. Everybody could use some help, not the same amount of help. They don't need the same amount of help, but changing that normative context that parents do it alone is something that we need to contribute to if we really hope to make people truly feel that the services we're offering are preventive and meant to help, not meant to stigmatize or target. So these were the issues we thought were the emerging issues in the field. This is a lifetime of work. This is decades and decades and decades of work to do. But we think these are concerns that are going to begin to shape the work that we do in home visiting, as well as the work we do in a wide range of fields. So in many ways, what I had wanted to do on the next slide was to say, and we did the HARC survey, and hundreds of you already completed it. And so I could tell you what the HARC survey results were. Sadly, hundreds and hundreds of you did not complete the survey. So I've changed it now for the balance of this session is to really talk about what you all are thinking. And I wanted to divide this into the 2 groups, into the enduring issues and the emerging issues. I will tell you, we had about 116, I think, HARC members have completed the survey. And over half of them were researchers. After we have our discussion, I might tell you what those findings were trending. I will tell you, there's not extremes. I mean, you know, yes, some issues were a little bit more important than others, but none of these are showing up as not important. So I lay that out as the beginning of the discussion. We'd also thought we might try to do a poll during this session, but that didn't work so well either. Kate said we couldn't do a poll. So at this point, we're going to do the near impossible. And I'm going to just open it up for people, and as you're thinking about your comments, and remember, I call on people. So anybody that's showing up on here, be forewarned. You know, I can see your face, I'll call on you. Think about these in a couple of ways. You could say, I think this is the most important. Or you might say to me, you know what? I think 2 or 3 of these go together, that there's really no way to separate it out. If we do X, we're going to have impacts on Y. So there's a lot of smart people on this call. And I just want to spend at least, you know, we can have a good 5-7 minutes just on this set of issues to get what your priorities are. And I've heard, having listened to all the presentations today, you all have been dealing with these issues one way or the other, and your research has certainly contributed to them. So who is going to help me out by being bold and talk on these specific things?
Deb,
Okay.
Marilyn Van Ostrom has her hand raised.
Oh, great. Oh, that will help. If you raise your hand, then I can do that. And Jane, if you can help me find people, or if people put something in the chat, that'd be great. Marilyn, what are you thinking?
Yeah, hi Deb, nice to see you. So I don't, I'm not a researcher, so I don't know how this will exactly fit in your buckets, but there's two big things that I see that are different now than we've faced before. One is home visiting safety. So, you know, our nurses are being exposed to, you know, having to think about fentanyl in the home, thinking about their safety, the child's safety. And that's different than other drug use. So that's one. And then healthcare access, post-pandemic, the lack of healthcare and services in our rural community, the nurses bring it to me every day where they feel very alone out in caring for their families, that no one gets back to them, extremely depressed or anxiety, even suicidal, trying to contact a psych or a PCP and getting nothing, no one has time to even consult with them. And so feeling very alone. And then just quickly, the third thing I'd say, which fits in with this, is that I think about maternal mortality in the medical desert. Again, like with pregnant women, this is a change. How does that impact the home visitor when it's 45 minutes to an hour for them to receive prenatal care? So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
All enormous challenges. Others raise their hand. Okay, Allison Parrish asked a question about, on the enduring issues, how many of them require further, well, come on, little thing, don't disappear while I'm reading it. Further evaluation and scaling up of what works. Allison, you want to talk a little bit about that? In other words, we have strategies working. Can we move them forward first?
So, I mean, some of the newer evaluations I see come out are great. And like some of it is stuff I've heard before. And so I'm always really surprised at, with as long as we've been doing this work, that there's still so many places that don't seem to know what are the best practices or don't have access to the training, the curriculum, the technical assistance, whatever it might be. And so in some ways there seems to be this chasm, when I think about how the Breakthrough Series model was developed for learning collaboratives and how like it's sort of the gap between what we know and what we're doing. And I think there's a lot more that could be done there to bridge that gap in terms of replicating what works with still, I'm not putting you guys out of work, right? We still need evaluators to make sure that's being done effectively. But it's like, do we need more, information, or is it really just about it's not being disseminated in a way where it's being, there's uptake with fidelity to what we know works?
Okay. Yeah.
Just for the enduring issues. I realize there's a whole lot of new issues that still need a lot.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Just a question. I don't pretend to know the answer.
Someone writes, in addition to considering funding requirements, also thinking about the complexities of accessing funding, which limits the ability to reach additional families and address system integration to meet their families' needs. That's certainly true. Yeah. Oh, Darcy, hi.
Oh, Darcy, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Darcy. You still are on mute, dear.
Okay, thank
There
you.
you go.
I mean, I think that you've done a wonderful job of putting these issues together. because I think that we all would agree that these are all so important. There are a few that for me rise to the top. One is as we are recognizing that telehealth is possible and that it works in many situations. And I think that all of us have looked at that in the past around very rural families or frontier families or terrible weather when we want to still connect with our families, you know, all of those. But I also think that we have to be really careful about how well it works. You know, we can't just say, oh, it seems to be working then, and so we're going to use it and it's going to be fine and we can do this instead, or it's just as good. I don't think we really know. I don't think we have the research. And I think that it may be just as good for some kinds of some parts of home visiting or in some models. And in others, it really may not be so good, especially the more the relationship between the parent and the child is being looked at, the much more difficult it is to do on a small screen and to really kind of gather that. Okay, so that's one thing. Two, I think that we need to think always with a continuum. And because there is a continuum within our home visiting models, there are a continuum of intensity of services. And I think it's time we embrace that, recognize that, and embrace that. It's, you know, they're not all the same. And for some families, everyone needs, as you said, support. And it differs dramatically about how much and what kind, because every family is so unique.
That's
and
right.
so to be able to recognize that and also say, you know, yes, so our families do need, for instance, mental health supports, and we need someone to call the same way. We just heard a wonderful presentation about the Medical Legal Partnership, the same way, and Jess, you were fabulous, the same way we see that the home visitors need someone to call, so do our home visitors need someone to call around mental health issues, and they shouldn't be standing alone with this. And that it all goes all the way to actually having mental health intervention in the home, especially dyadic mental health intervention in the home. I think we need funding and understand funding beyond MCV, because MCV can't do it all. But there are lots of ways, and Kay Johnson talks about that all the time. But it's very, you know, we still have to implement it. To just say they're there, every state is different, and we know every state is different, and how are we going to do this? And we need policy change, and we need to make it much easier than it is now. Yeah. And then lastly, I think I would say that the whole idea of reflective supervision is, we talk about it a lot. We name it as reflective supervision, but not all reflective supervision is reflective supervision. And reflective supervision goes way beyond supporting a home visitor. It really is about helping them understand what's going on inside the family and inside themselves, because there are reactions in both directions when one is working so intimately with a family. And if you have kind of, you know, you have to open your mind to that. You have to take off your blockers and see that, especially around the issue of equity, because what we see a lot is the home visitor who is white and is still in a place of power, and a family who is of color. And we have to really look at that seriously. And what does that mean to the family? And what does that mean to the home visitor? And we have to address it directly, not just, we have to talk about it, because otherwise it remains unconscious and we keep on doing the same things. And that may well have a lot to do with why families leave. The value, the respect, the connection that's made. Those are my thoughts.
All excellent points. This is good. I'm cognizant of my little time here. So just by way of wrapping up the enduring issues, the little 116 people that talked, the three that were marginally found more important than the others was the access to clinical services, the impact on funding requirements, on program operation, and initial and ongoing engagement, which is sort of interesting because that's in a way what Darcy was just touching on. Those were marginally more of higher concern than the others, but again, the differences are not very big. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and Jane, and for about 5 minutes, we're going to talk about the emerging issues. That's the next slide. So this is the staff question, the hybrid model, the community context, changing our research paradigm in a profound way, and balancing investments between targeted and universal. On this set of issues, where would people see some of the more, where the research emphasis has to be placed? Or you saw, because I think on the HARC survey, you're asked to rate these from 1 to 6. So there's a little more variability here. But Jess, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that this rethinking how we think about research has got to happen. And I could talk for like hours on this. And you've heard me go on about it, but just to vent for 2 seconds, these are this evidence-based, rigorous RCT, blah, 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 like that is not sufficient. It's not sufficient to capture what's actually happening on the ground with home visitors. And there needs to be a willingness to stretch and resist these sort of traditional economic methodology or academic methodologies. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see the 1 minute warning?
I did. Kim, you had your hand up. I'm going to just, yeah.
Well, maybe this just reflects my age and I'm getting stubborn, but I just want more research on the hybrid model. I just feel like it's called a home visit. Is it really as good to do it virtually? Am I just getting cranky that I remain suspicious even when I see research? I don't know. I just feel like I want more. I feel like I want more evidence.
Yeah. I think that people would agree with that. Oh God, 10 seconds. You people were wonderful. And I thank you for joining. And if you have more questions, send them to me because this is a work in progress.